Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of the Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft, and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office. And welcome to Table Talk. Feels like it's been a while, especially since I've been here with Doug to talk. And so what we're going to be doing is talking about The House the Dragon. Episode 6 dropped last Sunday, so a couple of nights ago. This is Tuesday, so a couple of nights ago. It's been a while since we've been able to chat about that. I've got lots of notes that I want to talk to Doug about, and Doug is here with us. Notes on themes. I've got notes on themes, different plots, different plot points, and things like that. Although he and I have both been watching this show basically from the enjoyment perspective. We will talk about that, but I do have some notes here for commentary. So everybody, hey, please welcome Douglas A. Burton. Welcome.
Hey, what's happening, everybody?
Good to see you
Man,
again.
it feels like it's been forever.
I know it does feel like it has been a while, and that's
it's nice to be chatting with you again.
nice to be chatting with you.
Oh, awesome.
All right. Well, do you want to start by talking about what is your relationship with this show?
Well, so TV has been a lot of hit and miss. Entertainment has been hit and miss. Movies have been hit and miss. Hollywood seems to have lost the magic touch, from Marvel to Star Wars. I mean, you name it, with some exceptions. And, this year I have had some good luck in that I watched Shogun, which I thought was some of the best television I've seen in years. And last year, I loved House of the Dragon. And I think you and I
2 years ago.
What's that?
2 years ago.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, but we discussed how, nobody was asking for the show. There seemed to be no official demand for this show. It was purely the showrunners and the production studio gambling that there would be demand. And lo and behold, they were right. There's total demand. This show knocked it out of the park off the bat when it first came out in season 1. And here we are in season 2. And it's impossible not to compare it to The Acolyte, which is the other big show with a bunch of hype. And so when you watch The Acolyte, as I have, and found myself disappointed almost across the board, then I turn on House of the Dragon season 2, and all that goes out the window. I am watching a competently filmed, brilliantly written, brilliantly acted production. And so my relationship to the show right now is pure entertainment. I think you mentioned that up front. Pure entertainment. I'm sitting back. I am enjoying the show. I'm enjoying the performances. I'm just loving House of the Dragon.
So you did watch Acolyte?
I watched the first 3 episodes. I have not continued it, but those first 3 episodes were extremely disappointing to the point of shock. I can't believe how goofy that show was hobbled together through those first 3 episodes. So I lost interest. I also lost interest around episode 6 or 7 in Mandalorian season 3. So Star Wars, which I am the target audience. Well, I used to be the target audience. I have no interest in watching these shows, which is crazy.
All right. So I think it has been a while since we've been able to talk about this particular show, because we were big fans of the show. Like we spoke after the release of the first episode, and I think we've got big since then.
Well, I think we also spoke after episode 3, right?
Oh, maybe that was after episode 3, right? So we've just released episode 6. So there was the big dragon battle in episode 4. We got the dragon battle, and then we've had 2 episodes since then.
Right. Yeah. So for those of you who are catching up, I guess there will be some spoilers in this. So if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't watched House of Dragon, now's a good time to hit pause and maybe watch those episodes, come back and unpause.
But yes, there will be spoilers. So
I guess we're going to cover episodes 4, 5, and 6, the last 3 episodes.
4, 5, and 6, right. So I did get this. I got this in.
Oh, awesome.
And I have not started reading it yet because I was reading Brianna's book, City of Reckoning. So I finished City of Reckoning 2 nights yesterday. It might have been yesterday. It might have been yesterday. I finished City of Reckoning.
Oh, you finished it?
Yep, I finished it. Yeah, that was in the text. So I finished it. It is done. But I wasn't going to start this while I was still trying. I mean, this is a City of Reckoning size book right here. So I wasn't going this. Yeah. So I have this. We still have Cameron's book to read. I've got a book on the Roman Empire. I want to read. So it's not this all of a sudden increased the stack here. But I was like, since I have not read the book yet while I've been watching the show, I'll just not. Like I won't try to get into it because it's only 2 more episodes. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to dive into this. So in that time anyway, and I had not gone back and rewatched season 1. I kind of intended to, right? But it's the release of this season snuck up on me, and all of a sudden it was here. So I have been watching dutifully every Sunday. But yeah, I have not gone back and watched. I was rewatching some of last night or 2 nights ago's episode before we went live here. So later, I think I'll have to do a complete rewatch of everything all the way through. Like read this book and then do a rewatch, and then maybe there'll be time to do a live stream or something with considering all of that.
Maybe I'll join you in that because that's been on my mind too. Because I've read it, but 6 years ago, I would like to reread it and match it up to the movies. I've heard people discuss what's in the books and what are not in the books. So it'd be nice to do that. So maybe that's a project I'll bear the burden with you.
That's a big one because Yes, there's so many different books. Although I think we're down to Cameron's now. Once we finish with Brianna's, there'll be Cameron's, and then I want to get I got this book, but I bought the wrong book again. This is Pax. This is the War and Peace in Rome's Golden Age. But what I really meant to get was the book Dominion by Tom Holland, which talks about I want to read this, and I would love to invite him on the stream because he talks about, I believe he's talked about this on live streams. It seems to be what his book is about. The culture, pagan culture and Roman culture, and what that actually means and what that is.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's particularly in light of the conversations that we've had regarding your books about the Byzantine Empire and how do you get into the mind of a Byzantine and what does that mean and things like that. I thought that he would be a really good one to, because this is nonfiction. This is nonfiction to discuss that with. So all of a sudden, you eliminate one giant book and then more of them stack up.
That's usually how it goes, man. You're never out of the woods.
All right. Well, where do you want to start talking about what we've got here with this series?
I think it's worth it to at least talk about that episode 4 because episode 4 absolutely blew me away. We have dragon combat entering the picture, and not from a side part, but like full engagement. And episode 4, I think, is their best episode yet. And it was absolutely captivating to watch multiple dragon riders on multiple dragons enter into a conflict of consequence where people aren't just going to walk away from this, and they don't. Some major pieces are knocked off the board, and the whole situation is redesigned. And, to me, that shows the power of the dragons. And there's dialogue attributed to this. Dragons aren't just another tool in the toolbox in warfare in this world. It's kind of like the atomic bomb in the real world. There's been many wars fought since 1945. None of them have involved nuclear weapons because the second you use a nuclear weapon, you cross a certain line, and nobody wants to cross that line, right? In House of the Dragon, in Game of Thrones, that's kind of what it means to start to employ a dragon into warfare, because you can annihilate entire standing armies. You invite other dragons to come in, and if you kill that dragon, you take out major players in either side, like that. So the dragons are the worst level escalation you can get to in warfare, and we're here in this Targaryen civil war.
I also enjoyed episode 4. So we were riding on a high. I think absolutely after episode 1. I think through episode 3. I really enjoyed episode 4 as well. Of course, I knew that by the time we got past episode 4, like with that we were going to have at least a slow down, and we've had a slow down for 2 episodes following that. So we've had 2 very much slower episodes. I've been trying. I was taking a look at some of the different criticisms that people have had of this, and of course, there has been several with regard to the book. And I was like, well, okay. Like, we talked about earlier how the blood and cheese incident seems to have gone differently. And when I didn't really want to read too deep into it, but when I was reading on Reddit or whatever else about it, I was like, well, okay, now if blood and cheese goes differently in the books, I can see how people would be upset that it didn't have the amount of impact that it perhaps should have, like psychological impact that it perhaps could have if it were different. So I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to read all of that.
But when you told me what really happened, I myself was like, oh man, the book version sounds way better.
the book version sounds better. So I don't. So that could be the case in different places as well. But I was looking at this and I was thinking, when we're talking about the dragon battle, it does seem strange to me that the Greens never developed a strategy to counter Aemond and Rhaegar. Like, that seems to be the first thing that they would have done. Like, we've got this highly capable prince riding this epic level dragon, like I believe the largest one out there. And but I suppose their handoff to the tip of the hat to that was when Damon tried to get the queen who never was, who rides Melees. So, hey, we should go out and we should actually hunt for Rhaegar and take him out. And she rejects that. She rejects that. Was that in episode 1 or 2 or something like that of season 2? That was early on, and that was one of the things. And then that was when Damon was going to write it, and then of course, once he does the blood and cheese incident. I guess that was episode 1.
Okay, right. That sounds right.
Yeah. That. Why can't I think of the writer of Melees? I was trying to look that up, but anyway, the fact that they have no idea what they are doing, like they have no idea to counter something like that, that seems to be their main threat. Like, how do you counter that? And,
well, I think there was some gamble that nobody would dare use dragons, right? Like,
Rhaenys.
Well, isn't that part of it?
Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think some of the thinking was that, they wouldn't dare use dragons like that. That would be the escalate. That'd be like to cross the Rubicon. You can't go that far. Because remember, in episode 1, there was still some sense that maybe that there were pieces being moved, but actual combat had not started yet, right?
Well, now people do talk about this. Depends on what you're actually talking about starting combat, because we ended with Luke's death in season 1.
Season 1.
That was drawn, and the expression that Rhaenyra has when she turns around, I'm wondering, like, what story are we trying to tell here? And like I said, having not read the book, like, what type of story are we trying to tell here? Because when Rhaenyra is told of Luke's death, I mean, she has that fantastic scene with no words, whatever, when she turns around and she looks fierce and ready for war. It looks like it is on in that moment. And that being such a pivotal scene, like you think, okay, now wait a minute. So Aemon, he may have screwed up. He might not have intended to do that. That was kind of his look after Rhaegar has killed Luke. But it didn't seem like Rhaenyra really would have cared that much. That, okay, Luke is now dead. She does fly off to confirm it, and she finds the body of the dragon and things like that. But then she has been rather passive since then. So that's like, what is this story supposed to be?
Well, I think she is on the mental level of there's still a chance to de-escalate this, right? That obviously some bad blood has been spilled. Obviously the situation is ugly, but we can still save this. We don't have to go to war, because there's even that scene, which we discussed, I think, last time, where her and Queen Alicent secretly meet in the Sept, and Rhaenyra is the one trying to de-escalate or extend the olive leaf by saying, none of this is necessary because you're not even really supposed to be the queen. And of course, Alicent's like, oh, but that's not going to change. So that's it. No one's going to surrender their claim. And that's when Rhaenyra kind of agrees that it's going to be difficult to de-escalate. But there's a big problem because Daemon disappears, and Daemon's kind of sitting this one out right now. So he's kind of helping, but he's not doing much. So she loses.
Daemon has unfortunately not been doing very much, and I do accept that criticism.
Yeah. So, and that's got to stop. Daemon's too great of a character to
it's got to stop.
Yeah. And we'll get back to that, because the Matt Smith issue we should definitely discuss. That's a big one. But in terms of understanding Rhaenyra's motivation and the passivity or the passiveness in the face of catastrophe, some of it is based on an initial desire to de-escalate. And then when she realizes she's going to have to fight, she loses Daemon. And she's not necessarily... Oh, and she loses Rhaena, like you said, the queen who never was. So am I saying that right? Her name's Rhaena, right?
Rainey's,
Rainey's, that's right.
Rainey's, Rainey's. Yeah.
And she's huge. She's in terms of a stateswoman, she's elderly and experienced and wise. She's obviously courageous and brave. She rode the dragon into combat, and she goes down. She's gone. So Rhaenyra is losing. She loses Daemon. She loses Rainey's. I mean, she's losing major pieces on the board here. So she's going to have to do something, So I think that some of the passivity is based on some early knockout blows.
Eventually she will. Eventually, I mean, you would think eventually she would do. Because I mean, I was wondering, like when I was like, what kind of story are we telling? These are the kinds of questions that have only really come up to me in the last couple of episodes. And
okay,
2 episodes, and because like I said, I've really been enjoying this. But when I was like, okay, so are we about to see people who are absolutely beyond rationality going into this major war that tears everything apart?
Right?
Okay, but that's not really what's being presented to us. Okay, so I mean, that's not it. Like just insane people who are just we can talk about the different themes here, but I think one problem it seems like is that when we've got all of the marketing for this, okay, blacks versus green, choose which side you're on. That sounds like a really cool idea, especially with all these the marketing, and a lot of the marketing revolves around the 2 queens that you've got, Rhaenyra, and then you see Alicent, like standing, looking at each other across posters and things like that.
Right, that's true.
But that's not really what this show has been about.
Well, I mean, like, you're right.
When Aemond looked at Alicent and he was like, "Remind me why you're on this council." I was like, "Yeah, I've been wondering that too. Why is she on this council by now?" So even by the time Rhaenyra had come to talk to her in the Sept, and we talked about that scene or what that might have meant, because that seems like something was not in the book, as I understand what it was trying to do, but like, she had lost a lot of power by that time. Now, the counter to that is that Rhaenyra might not have known that. How little power she actually has in the Red Keep at that point. Even if she agreed, she might not have been able to stop war. But that could have been a miscalculation just on Rhaenyra's part, because she didn't know the lack of power that Alicent has.
Well, I think...
good.
No, I was just going to say, one of the keys to whether or not she has power... What's up, Fletcher? Is the claim to the throne went through Alicent, and the other claim to the throne goes through Rhaenyra. So I think there's that. But in terms of actual power being wielded, you're absolutely right. Alicent was neutered in this last episode by Aegon. What does he say? You should return to more domestic pursuits.
Right.
Such an insult, man. So she seems to be, to your point, rather useless.
Yeah. Yes. And that. So I would have liked to have seen, like, when Aegon was still ambulatory at the moment, like it should have been his force of will against hers, against Rhaenyra's. That would have been him versus her, because those are the 2 claimants to the throne. Fletcher says, honest feeling, this second season has been really slow paced. I've been enjoying the mystery surrounding Alice Rivers, and that's all basically. And the Rhaenyra's battle was good. Rainey's battle was good, but besides that, in my opinion, Alice Rivers and perhaps everyone Daemon has been interacting with Harrenhal are just ghosts or hallucinations. Well, people have been talking about that. I know people have been talking about that. Like, is Alice Rivers a ghost? But she did kill Grover, right?
Well, it's Grover implied.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, that's
implied.
Like, oh, okay. So she went over there and killed him. Or do I think it's all now? I don't know if they're doing that. I hope not.
I hope that's not the case.
I hope not. Maybe, but yeah, he needs. See, who was talking about this? That this was as far as storytelling goes, and I think this is part of the weakness that we're seeing is that people like characters who are active. We're going to talk about this when we talk about eventually, because I did go through all of this and I took notes, and I'm going to have to take more notes and things like that. The Lucifer.
Lucifer.
Yeah, the poem that we were just talking about with it's the fall of Lucifer. Oh my God. What am I talking about?
Are you talking about Paradise Lost?
Paradise Lost. Thank you. So Paradise Lost.
Okay.
Talking about Paradise Lost, like, why do people connect with Lucifer? We'll talk about, we've mentioned this before, and we'll talk about this again. It's because he is active. He is active, and so him is actually active whereas Adam is very passive. Adam is passive. He doesn't do a whole lot. It may not have been the intention to make Lucifer the hero of the story, but you wrote a story where Adam is, although he's good, he's largely passive, whereas Lucifer is very active. So we tend to gravitate toward characters who are active and who do things. And in this case, we happen to have some examples of some what should be interesting characters who have not actually been agentive in the story a lot in season 2. Rhaenyra is one of them. I mean, really, other than her going to King's Landing, sneaking into King's Landing.
Right.
And then Daemon was active, and he instigated the blood and cheese, but then he got reprimanded for that, even though she kind of ordered it. He got reprimanded for that, and then went to Harrenhal, where he's trying to do something, but has largely not during these scenes. And I thought about this idea of being active when Alice Rivers tells him, don't do anything for 3 days. I thought about that storytelling point again. I was like, from the storytelling perspective, that's not a good one, telling this major character, just wait. Okay, now it's because she's going to go off and do something. Okay, so it looks like she went off and killed the Tully Lord. But Daemon is one of the main characters, and we haven't seen him active. We haven't seen Rhaenyra active. And in many respects, we haven't seen Alicent active. And if she's going to carry it, she should have been. We did have action on, like, Aegon's part. He was like, okay, well, I'm going to go ride the dragon, and I'm going to take care of this.
Right. So, yeah, episode 4, there was a lot of action, a lot of people making decisions, a lot of people, making decisions that had huge consequences, which I think is what you mean by active on some level. But the episode 5, I thought, was the slowest of the season. The one before this most recent one. It was very slow. I was actually surprised by how slow it was. And I thought that episode 6 picked up. Prince Aemon, or King Aemon, he's kind of standing in there. He's been very good. His character's grown on me a great deal. It seems like Otto Hightower is coming back in this. But my big problem is Daemon. It's been about 3 episodes where this character, who should be active, is kind of, circling in these, like, dreamlike states. And it was cool in the first episode, but by episode 6, I am a little tired of that. I would like to see Daemon return to Daemon. He's like in a penalty box or something. And there really you don't need him to be. If he's going to go on his own and make a third claim to the throne, then do that. Who are you going to get? How's it going to go? Who's resisting you most immediately?
Or it could not be going well. Okay, I flew off and I was going to do this stuff in the Riverlands, and now it has not gone well for me. Okay, I mean, that could also be a way that it could go. Then it would be kind of like a warning thing. Like, you had everything you needed when you were there with Rhaenyra, and now of course, she kind of drove you off, but then you flew off, and now, all right, I'm going to do all this stuff, and now actually you can't. Okay, I mean, that could be an important lesson kind of thing, but we haven't really been seeing that either. He hasn't been fouling things up, or something.
Well, he's just kind of neutralized himself in a way. So he's interacting with, to be honest, characters that we find. So when he goes to Harrenhal, and there are, and it's in shambles. You know, it's a ruined castle. He opens a door and there's people there, right? And these people seem to be of very little consequence. They're not that interesting. And then they introduce Alice. Alice is interesting. I found her very interesting. She said she was a barn owl cursed to live as a human. That's very fascinating to me. She seems to have some magical ability. She obviously seems to be able to match up with Damon. So they have pulled a little rabbit out of their hat in taking a brand new character, making Damon interact with her, and there's something interesting there. That aside, though, nothing else is interesting. In fact, in this most recent episode, he's having a dream. He's banging on a door, and he's on the ground, almost groveling. And then the door opens, and it's, I think, what is it, Lord Strong? Lord Strong? Anyway.
Yeah.
He's there, and I'm like, man, this is just such a bad look for Daemon Targaryen. It's a bad look. He's not impressive. He's not interacting with someone I like. So they need to reverse course on that. I think that by itself will resume some of the action that we want to see. It was much more interesting when people are making decisions that are either they have permission or they don't. Yeah, in fact, so Fletcher says Alice is basically Melisandre. She's 400 years old in the book, and in the TV series they're making her look literally like the ghost of Harrenhal. So I've heard this theory that Alice might actually be Melisandre. I have heard that.
I have not heard that. I have not heard that.
Yeah, she might be Melisandre. I guess the age Melisandre would be alive, but the argument against that is that the magic being used is different. Melisandre uses what was it, blood magic? What was what they call it? The new gods. Anyway, well, okay. So Fletcher doesn't think that's true, but that's one of the theories going on, that she could actually be her.
Okay, so there is this the kiss.
Oh yeah, it's not in the books.
And it wasn't in the script.
Oh, it wasn't in the script.
So yeah, I was reading that the other day. So let's see here. And I wanted to be sure that I have this right, because I was looking at this quote that was captured and put on. Who is this talking here? I've got an interview here. Massaria.
Yeah. She's the white worm, I think they call her.
Right. But I believe this is her actress who plays Massaria. This must be her actress talking right here. So it says that from a technical standpoint, how intentional was the choreography of the hug into a kiss? Were there multiple versions of it? And she says it wasn't a scripted kiss. It was scripted as an intimate moment that got interrupted, and it was unknown where the scene was going to. Emma and I both strongly felt that we didn't want it to be queer baity in any way, and we wanted to step back, look at it, and take care of it. But it just felt right. It would be a kiss. So it seems like that was.
I think. Well, queer baiting is a legitimate criticism. We've talked about Arcane. We've talked about other shows that do this.
Talked about that on before,
right? Where they kind of brush by it, but they don't commit to it. So my problem is when that is the storyline and you avoid it, that's a mistake. However, if it's not the storyline and you're afraid of queer baiting, so you jump into it anyway, also a mistake. So what you have to do is be true and authentic to the story. So if the story calls for a lesbian relationship, then don't be afraid of that. Put that in there. That is your story. Don't veer away from your story. You're being inauthentic at that point. If it's a non LGBT relationship, and you're like, well, we don't want, and they're having a moment of intimacy, which, by the way, you can have people with same sex can have intimate moments that has nothing to do with sexuality. You can do that. That is part of humanity as well. So to say, well, we're having an intimate moment, we don't want it to be queer baiting, so we're going to add this relationship in. I think that's just as bad as having a genuine relationship that you avoid talking about. both are inauthentic, in my opinion. So I thought this was not effective for the story.
Fletcher said, I think that Rhaenyra's and Alicent's actresses have been trying to sexualize even more of the TV series. I think they're doing too much.
Well, I don't want to speculate on whether there's an agenda in terms of we're trying to sexualize the show, because even Game of Thrones was very sexualized. Like that was borderline X-rated in some scenes, and but to great effect. Because again, it felt authentic to their world. It felt authentic to their story. It was good, and they had LGBT themes in there. They were part of the book. They were true to form, and as a result, the audience has rewarded them with loving their show until season 8. Here, they're making the decision on whether or not to have the LGBT relationship based on things that have nothing to do with the story. Like you just said, we were afraid of being accused of something, so we decided to veer hard the other direction. That's not a storytelling decision. You're afraid of PR decision. Same thing with if there is an LGBT relationship and you're supposed to include it and you veer off because you're afraid of people being angry. Well, you're doing that again on a PR decision. So tell the story, stay true to your story. That's the only way to be authentic.
Well, I want to talk about themes, and I want to talk about. Well, we can talk about the female characters and their structure. Like from let me. This here is the physical part. This is one of the physical layer of the story, though. Before we get into the immaterial layer of the story, from the physical layer of the story, as I was watching this last episode, like I said, I knew that in the previous episode we were going to have a kind of a lull episode because we had just had the dragon battle. As we continue, I do not understand this blockade.
By the sea snake?
Yeah, I do not understand this blockade. Because, okay, so I may have missed, and this is one of the things, I have not gone back and studied. I was like, okay, so a blockade is an act of war. I mean, obviously, so you're talking about what starts a war, and people talk about this. Okay, the blockade would be an act of war. We're blockading King's Landing from the sea. And we have the Sea Snakes Navy, and that's now under blockade. What's the purpose of that blockade? When Rhaenyra ordered it, and like I said, I have not gone back and trying to study all of this, but it's like, to refresh my memory, because I'm just watching it week to week, as we've been talking about. I'm like, okay, right. So if she blockaded the city, is her intention not to starve the people? Or like, what is the purpose of that blockade? We're going to blockade the city in order to
prevent a navy from getting... Okay, so real quick, I'm not answering with authority. I'm saying,
okay,
like you, I don't know. I don't have a clear answer in my head. But you're asking me off the cuff. It makes me think that they're just preventing other navies. But I haven't heard any talk of other navies, to your point. Like, so they have not.
Well, they've mentioned that it will take too long. They're going to the Triarchy. Okay, Fletcher's bringing up the Triarchy here. They brought up the Triarchy in this last episode to try to break this blockade. But first of all, but my thinking was Rhaenyra constantly says how she does not have a land army. Like, one of the problems is that she does not have a land army. This is a major problem for her. And it's not like you can completely surround King's Landing with your navy. Like, if the intention is to try to starve out the city, okay, well, you're going to do a terrible job with that if you just have a navy. So I'm like, why are these people starving in this city? Like, we've got this idea that everybody's starving in King's Landing. Why isn't just supplies and food brought in by road? Because she has no navy. Like, if she has no army, she has no land army. Yeah, but but she talks about that, and it's not like it is laying siege to King's Landing. She doesn't have a land army laying. If you had a land army laying siege to King's Landing, in order to cut it off, you would need the Navy. If you just have the Navy, you also but somehow the Navy is okay. But still, House Stark is not laying siege to King's Landing. So why is everyone starving in the city? Why would you just
still the early part of the confrontation? Rhaenyra's placed the blockade using the Triarchy, right? Wait a second. So yeah, the sea snake is with Rhaenyra.
Right.
So he's blockading King's Landing, which cuts off food to coming into King's Landing for Queen Alicent. Is that the scenario?
Yeah. So he's blockading King's Landing. So, and they keep bringing up everybody's starving in the city.
Well, one thing that's important, and maybe you're right, maybe they have not done this. Sometimes I watch a show and I'm like, okay, so there's still a blockade out there. And I just understand at the level of, the blockade has to be dealt with. However, you're right. When I do try to piece it together and dig a little deeper, I'm not sure I understand it either.
I'm not sure. And it's I'm okay. So Clegane Stark can have a major. I'm just saying that right now, as I'm trying to understand what the situation in King's Landing is, I have not. I don't think I have been told that there is a Stark army outside of King's Landing.
Well, so you have to do what I call a tactical overview, and they did this in Game of Thrones. They would stand over the map and they would show you the situation. Star Wars does a great job at this. They give you a tactical overview of what's going on, what the objectives are, and this show did do that. What was it? Something Rook? What was what was the fort called that Sir Criston attacked?
Oh, you're talking about Rook's Rest?
Rook's Rest. That's what I'm trying. I completely blanked out there. They did give us some tactical overview on Rook's Rest. They had the camera shots where they showed you the cities. They showed you that it wasn't strategically important. But if he took it, it might risk cutting off. It might split the empire or the kingdom in two. So he's like, why don't we attack while he's vulnerable? That's a tactical overview that gives you some sense of the game board that we're playing on, what's at stake, and why we're making the decision that we're making. And I don't think they've done that in regards to the blockade.
We have not. And they also have not explained why Aemond, because if you've got these wooden ships out there, it seems like, oh, we're under a blockade, and for some reason this is starving us. Aemond would be like, hang on, I'll be back in 10 minutes, and fly his dragon out there. Like, surely it must be pretty easy to handle a blockade if you've got a dragon. Like, it just seems like especially if all you have to do is torch a few of them and get these other ships to run, how vulnerable they would be. So I don't understand why they are starving if they are not cut off on land. And I'm not understanding why someone doesn't just fly out there with a dragon for 10 minutes and torch the sea snake ships. That's never been explained. I don't understand.
Well, wouldn't she respond with a dragon in kind at that point to defend?
Well, that's why I'm saying like 10 minutes. Like, if you're like, now, see, that would be something like, are Rhaenyra's dragons actively patrolling the sky over King's Landing?
Well,
I don't think
we saw
so.
with Rook's Rest, we found that when you commit to using a dragon, you also risk losing that dragon. So, was Rhaenys? She went out there. Not only did we lose Rhaenys, we lost her dragon. Luke lost his dragon. We lost Luke. So you're losing not only the human component, but you're losing a major weapon at the same time. So that's why I think episode 4 aside, both sides have been unwilling to commit to dragons. They would rather fight more conventional war and only use dragons if they think they can strike and get out without retaliation. I think
somebody needs to say that on screen.
I agree. That I agree
Aemond needs to say, I'm not going to let this damnable blockade get my armor. I'm flying out there and I'm going to burn them down.
Right.
And then somebody needs to say to Aemond, no, that's way too dangerous. Sea smoke is out there, and it's dangerous. Would Aemond be afraid of sea smoke? On Rhaegar, but like, no, you can't do that. You and Rhaegar, sea smoke is out there. He will kill you. That I don't.
Right.
That I don't really think that would work. But I'm like, okay, what is going on? I don't know.
Well, that I agree. I think a dialogue assigned to that.
Yeah, but But we know there were dragons incoming. I do not think I have been told that the Dragonstone Dragon Air Force is patrolling, is part of the blockade. I don't think that he's. I don't think I've been told that the dragons are part of the blockade of King's Landing. They might be.
Well, they would be part of a defense of the blockade, for sure.
Yeah.
If it was my blockade out there and I was worried that a dragon might attack it, I would definitely have a dragon on standby to protect.
Well, you would think that the sea snake would be like, okay, we can go out there, but we're gonna have to give us dragon cover. And how many dragons do they have? Like, I mean, it's not. Damon isn't doing that.
Well, and it's not just how many dragons they have; it's how many dragon riders they have to pilot these dragons. There is an issue of a pilot shortage or a dragon rider shortage. So, I mean, I'm just thinking if I have a blockade and it's that easy to torch it, then I'm damn sure that I have dragons ready to defend that blockade. So I think there is the fear of that confrontation at that point. It's like an army, anyone, why not just attack the army? They're right there. Well, you can get outflanked and you can get annihilated if you just attack. So you have to attack in a way that is, that gives you a greater chance of victory. You attack from the flanks, you try to use a pincer maneuver, whatever, you try something that you think will work, but a direct assault on the blockade, I'm thinking, would provoke an immediate defense of the blockade with another dragon or two. So I think, I guess what I'm trying to say is they're trying to proceed with conventional warfare and not commit their dragons unless they feel they have an advantage, and that they can get that dragon back. I think that's the thinking. Yeah, Damon. And Damon's been MIA, man. He's got a great dragon.
No, this is Darren. He's talking about Darren here.
Oh, Darren.
You're talking about somebody who's MIA. Well, Darren has also been MIA. It surprised me.
Is he the 16-year-old that we haven't met yet?
He's the 16-year-old we haven't met yet. That was talking about that.
Darren.
There have been a couple of times in this season where somebody's told somebody something they really didn't need to know, and I think we joked about that in season 3 when Otto was like, Alicent, you have another son in Old Town. And she's like,
what?
Oh, I do? Oh, like why would you need to tell her that? She would know where his sons were, but she's like, Alicent, you do have another son. Like, oh, yeah. And we also had a moment like that when Rhaenyra's son was like, we have more, there are other dragons without riders under the under Dragonstone, and he's like listing off their names on his fingers. I'm like, that's something she would know. We don't need to
right. She should know that.
Dragons right here.
Well, but sometimes you do put some dialogue in there to help like I just said, a tactical overview, or like you said.
Well, I know, but when you put in there, you need to put that into a person telling somebody that who needs to know that information.
Know.
Like that needs to be some kind of intelligent discussion when you're telling somebody like, "Hey, Doug, you have a son," that you would know these things. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think those are issues with the writing that could have been shored up. It hasn't been bad enough to where it's disrupted the main flow. I think the most disruptive thing for me is Damon being just bogged down in Harrenhal. That's the part that has been bugging me the most. And I think, to your point, it's stripping us of a major character and agency. The right to respond and act. So, like, we're losing that out of them.
I got to talk about the pronunciation of a word.
Okay.
that completely takes me out of this. The Damon refers to someone as a dotard.
Oh, a dotard.
Right. Dotard. That word is pronounced dotard. Right. Because I think about that word a lot, because that was the word that Kim Jong-un used to describe Donald Trump.
A dotard?
Yes. Well, yes, it was dotard. Right. Because that word is because it comes from dotage. like, an old person who has become a person who is physically old, an old person who has become physically frail. And often when I think of a dotard or dotage, I think of mentally frail as well. I think it's both physically and mentally frail. And you've got I was first familiar with this term when I was watching the 1952 Ivanhoe, which is one of my favorite movies. And Ivanhoe's father, after he's wounded, wants to go and or wants to know what Ivanhoe's wounds are like and his conditions or things like that. And so he's sending in his daughter to find out. But he says, don't the relationship between the father and Ivanhoe are strained. He was like, don't tell him that I sent you, or otherwise he'll think I've softened into dotage. So,
Yeah.
but doddering old fool, right? But I remember when Kim Jong Un used that term, the dotage of a dotard, but people didn't know what that meant, and they pronounced it dotard. Like the number of people that I heard like on YouTube and elsewhere that's like, so Kim Jong Un just called Donald Trump a dotard. I was like, that word is not pronounced dotard. And yet it was said like that over and over and over again. I was like, that's dotard. Someone please. And then in episode 6, Damon, I don't know who he was referring to, says something that you dotard. It completely took me out of this show. It completely took me out because it sounded like the modern. It was the modern mispronunciation of this word.
Oh, I missed that.
And I guess I don't know. I just remember all of that word being mispronounced so many times. Like I remember people like on YouTube being like, Kim Jong Un just called Donald Trump a dotard? What is that? Like, I looked that up. What is this word? Like,
man, I don't even remember that.
It was like I looked up the I had something up here. Yeah, to find out like where this tweet was. Okay, this is like the BBC or something like this. When was this? Like 2019 or something like that.
I mean, do you think he mispronounced it on purpose?
I don't know.
Matt Smith is from the United Kingdom. I mean, it's not like he doesn't know how to pronounce the word.
Yeah, I know. So this was the North Korean Foreign Ministry, like in a tweet, said if Mr. Trump was confrontational, it must really be diagnosed as the relapse of the dotage of a dotard. And I remember everybody was like shocked by. They're like, "What does that language mean? What does this language mean?" So that was like 2019. That was 2019. Wow. So anyway, the fact that it was pronounced like that. I suppose it's almost like a new word that's been like
resurrected.
Word dotard, when it should be something like like you doddering old fool. And that's where that word comes from.
Yeah. I guess it didn't. That didn't have the same effect on me. I didn't get derailed by it. Now that you pointed out, it's kind of funny, but it also makes me think. I mean, Matt Smith knows what the word is, and so like if he's mispronouncing it, it has to be intentional.
It may have been intentional. It may have been a reference to that. It could very well have been an intentional reference to everyone's mispronunciation of this word.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I have no idea.
I did think that one of the best scenes in this last season was Aegon and Larys, the new Master of Whisperers.
Oh yes, that was a great scene.
Definitely, like that. For conversational scenes, that had a lot of impact. It had a lot of emotion, and it had a lot of significance.
Yep, agreed.
That's the way to go.
That was an excellent scene. I particularly appreciated his insult. He calls him a toad, and sometimes it's a perfect word.
Well, no, you're talking about between Aemond and Larry's in the council chamber.
Yes.
Which was also good. Yeah, and when he calls him a toad. Right, yes.
Yes. Oh, I thought that's what you were talking about.
No, I was talking about when Larry's comes to Aegon, the king who has been burned, to the king.
Oh, Aegon. Okay.
To Aegon, and he has the conversation about your life is in danger. You know, very honestly, you're never going to walk again. He connects with him because they both have crippled feet.
Right.
That you're never going to walk again, but all you're going to have is your mind. And I thought that scene with Larry's talking to Aegon in bed when, you know, Aegon can barely speak anyway. I thought that was a fantastic scene because you had those characters connecting on those same, on that level. You understood why those two would connect, why Larry's would reach out to him. And of course it does also have an impact on the plot because now you have, Larys siding with Aegon, you know, and being on his side when potentially he's basically the only person who might be.
Right. He's essentially offering to advise him, you know, counsel.
To advise him, yeah, and look out and really look out for him. Because I mean, there's only so much you can do at the moment, but at least no one is looking out for him. Alicent might be, but she has no power. And it's not like she's really been doing that anyway. You know, she came to see him a couple of times, but you don't really, I mean, I didn't get the feeling that she had his back and was going to be advocating for him. Right. This is it. Larry's would reach out to Aegon because Aegon's vulnerable. They have this point of connection. Aemond isn't easy to manipulate.
Not at all. In fact, he's not. Larys has proven unable to manipulate Aemond.
But I did love that scene. That sounded very natural, very, very natural. So yeah, he's our little finger type.
Right, exactly. He is a tower.
He's a little.
I actually liked Aemond for calling him out because that's exactly what he is. He's manipulative. He doesn't really stand for anything. He advises people well or not based on whether it aligns with his personal interest. And so when he begins to advise Aemond calls him out. He's like, "You are a toad." And he actually says, "I'm going to bring in Otto Hightower because at least that man stands for something. I know where I stand with him."
Well, and his loyalty to his family has never been in question.
Correct. So, but that in and of itself is something reliable to Aemond. You know, if I know he cares about his whole family, then there's at least a thread of reliability in his logic and his counsel. Versus this guy who seems to be just in it for himself, you know. So, you know, I thought that was an excellent scene with Larys and Aemond, and I thought it was a great scene as well with Larys and Aegon, where he's at his bedside, almost like, you know, hedging his bet a little bit in case Aegon makes a return.
Fletcher says there's some wild theories that Daemon ends up becoming one of the White Walkers of the Night King. Well, that might be interesting, but to me, one of the weakest parts of this show has been anytime they have tried to connect this to the Song of Ice and Fire.
Well, I think that they're smart to avoid all of that.
But they haven't been avoiding that because this prophecy, this dream, like we've had several scenes where, you know, of course, this dream was related to Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra was talking about this with her son. And I was like, this is a mistake to dwell on this, to bring this up, because every time that you bring this up, you're reminded that this prophecy amounts to nothing because we've already seen this other show, this other show that ended
badly. I agree with that.
So I would have cut all of that. I was like, we can't do that because everybody, when they watch this, is going to think about Game of Thrones season 8.
I don't mind like a mention, you know, like that it comes up once maybe, because what the fascinating part to me is, what did they think about that prophecy 100 years ago? So to hear it mentioned once, I'm fine with that. But yeah, I don't need to be, the less they bring it up, the better.
I think the less they bring it up, the better.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. What type
and
of
I just
theme?
don't like shows that are too self-aware, you know, like too self-aware of what comes next, you know. That
okay, well,
that
let's talk about self-awareness right here. I think that's a great transition to talk about. Let's talk about themes. Like because I was trying to understand, what is this supposed to be about? What is this about. We've talked a little bit about what we think the theme of the Game of Thrones is. And I've talked about that, and I've talked about what I think the themes that George R. R. Martin is trying to articulate or was trying to articulate in his books. And that's left open to question because he hasn't finished them. But, there were certain themes that I thought that he was addressing in his books that I thought were good ones. And ones that often weren't done in our classic high fantasy settings. So, but now here, okay, we've got what is this about from a thematic perspective? What is this about?
So my impression of what it's about comes from originally having read the book. But again, that was 5 years ago. And at the time, the show did not exist. It was very abstract. It was Aegon's and Viserys, and all the names all sounded the same. So there was a lot of abstraction in the reading. And so my long-term, my retention is very low. I remember very little. So when I'm watching this, I don't remember, Fletcher seems to know very clearly what's in the book compared to what we're watching and what is about to happen. So I don't remember how this plays out. However, this is simply a story of how a family, the House of Targaryen, had a lock on power, ruled everywhere. They presided over an era of peace, and how this family tears itself apart and rips itself apart and splits off into factions and absolutely decimate each other. So I don't think they're trying to take a side. I don't think they're trying, at least at this point, at least how I remember when I first read it, that this is just, it becomes a fascinating story of self-immolation. It's like the great suicide by a million cuts of this great family. So to me, that's kind of the overarching idea, kind of like that other show I saw earlier this year, The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix. You have this house that's seemingly invincible, and the whole show is watching this invincible, wealthy, prestigious, everyone's doing whatever they want, how it all comes apart episode by episode by episode.
Okay, I see. I think that's kind of what I was wanting to see. I can see that, but see, then we still have a theme. The theme would be, okay, you can be at the top of the world, which would be our Targaryens, and then through arrogance, perhaps it's a warning about arrogance, perhaps it's pride or something, that everything can spiral out of control into utter disaster. Or an utter ruin. Okay. That could be one of them. I don't think I've been seeing that on screen. Like I mentioned before, I don't think I've been seeing that necessarily on screen.
What? Hubris?
Yeah. Or that we've got that they're, so obsessed with revenge or something, or just obsessed with retaining power that all of this happens to you. But like I said, and that could have gone that way when, like I said, Rhaenyra turns around after the death of Luke and you just see this rage in her eyes. Then you could have a story where the theme would be something about the lessons of rage. Like, listen, what happened? She then, her son was killed and then she went off the deep end. Or something like that. But she's backed off so much of that I haven't seen that. I mean, but I think about, there seems to be some things that come up a couple of times, actually, or two things that have come up multiple times. But I do think very much about Maxwell Alexander Drake when he's talking about how do you handle themes in stories. He's very big on themes. He says that your theme is a question, okay, and that your book is answering this question, and you're tugging on this side and you're tugging on this side, and the back and forth between the answering of this question before you get to the end, and it's answered however this is going to be, like Star Wars with faith versus technology, and these things are
right.
But he also says you can never say these things. You can't just say what your theme is, and they do say several things They say, I've noticed two things come up quite a bit, which I'm wondering if they think, therefore, this is the theme. Because the idea that men want war and women want peace comes up very explicitly several times. This has come up several times, that the men want war and women want peace.
Well,
and that's stated very explicitly.
Yeah, I don't believe that that's true. And if so, then I think they're making a mistake to make that claim, because you're at that point you're essentially making the claim that one gender is superior to the other, and I think that's not going to go anywhere.
Remember, we're only talking about what is true in the world of this particular story.
Sure. No. Okay. Right, and we did talk about that when Rhaenyra went to discuss with Alicent in the Sept, which I told you I thought that scene struggled because it was hard to believe. And I thought that scene did come from this line of thought that women would never allow a war to start, which I was happy to see. That just because they're women doesn't mean that they're going to stop all the forces in motion, masculine and feminine, that's moving toward this direction. In fact, in that scene, Alicent hears for the first time, and there's a flicker of, oh my God, I misinterpreted the Song of Ice and Fire to think that Viserys named my son the successor. Maybe I made a mistake. Well, she doesn't accept. She storms off after that. So there's no superiority there. She's just also as vain and egotistical as anyone else.
But also, to go on that side for just one moment, she articulated Alicent, she being Alicent, articulated a major reason for this war to her son Aegon in season 1. She was like, if you are not king, then you are going to be a threat to Rhaenyra forever, and she'll kill you. She articulated a very practical argument to her sons, which I thought was the better one. Right, yes, a much more logical, that was not based on the misunderstanding of deathbed words, but unfortunately that seems like has been largely been dropped. Her much more practical power argument, like, listen, if you don't do this, if you don't become king, you're probably going to be killed because you're going to be a threat to her. That seemed like it got dropped because they wanted them on, oh my God, have I misunderstood? It doesn't matter if she misunderstood those words, right? Because the reality of the situation would be that her children would still be in danger.
The logic of power is inescapable, whether you are a man or whether you are a woman. Women have participated in power and overseen wars, as have men. And I think the logic of power makes certain assumptions and dictates reasoning. And so, like you said, it's dropped that maybe there was a misunderstanding. Well, the misunderstanding mattered, right?
No. What was dropped was the practical argument.
Oh.
She articulated that practically in season 1. But then
once
we got to the Sept scene, oh my God, have I misunderstood? Did I do something wrong? Doesn't matter if you misunderstood. Your original argument that has not really come up in season 2 at all, which was the practical one of power, was an important one.
Well, I think whether they talk about it or not, the logic or the practical, I think the law of power is there whether you like it or not. I mean, you could say, I won't commit my place to war. But if the other army comes roaring up and starts slaughtering wholesale thousands of people, well, you're going to better do something, or they're going to get rid of you and they're going to put someone there who will. So, the logic of power stands. And I think one of the themes here is, and it was one of the themes in Game of Thrones, the logic of power has this magical, both practical and egotistical effect on all who play this game. And it's inescapable. I'm right in my book right now. I'm running into this issue with Empress Theodora. When the logic of power comes to you, do you just not play and risk everyone that you care about being bowled over by people you might be able to stop? Or do you stop those people? There's things at stake there. So I think that is a theme. The logic of power, I think, is a theme. I think the hubris and egoism as it plays a role. And I think that there's a Schadenfreude to watching the invincible slowly crumble. Like the House of Disney right now, they were invincible. But now we're watching this almost catastrophic slide of this company. So what I'm saying is there's some Schadenfreude there. There's something compelling about watching an invincible force navigate themselves from mistakes, from oversight errors, from misunderstandings, miscommunications, the logic of power, to all of these forces together, to base egos, watching them just wreck themselves in front of our very eyes. So, to me, I think those are some of the overarching themes that are making people, intrigued and invested in the story.
So, but we could have a story like the theme could be like, the question could be, are women inherently more peaceful than men?
I do think
like,
from my own, yeah.
Well, I don't care what's true in our physical world. I only care what's true in the story, in the world of the story. It's like saying Star Wars, the original Star Wars, being about which is better, faith or technology. Star Wars is not answering that question about which is better, faith or technology in our actual world. It's answering that question in the world of Star Wars. In that world, faith, the Force, is what you should go with. So that's what that answers. So
are you saying that this show is saying that women are non-war like?
I'm saying they have said that very explicitly several times in this story. So if that's a theme, so when I say what are the themes of this, one could be, okay, what is the relationship that men and women have to war? If that's the theme they're trying to explore, they're doing it in a very heavy-handed way by several times at the council, it being explicitly stated that the women don't want war and the men do. But there's nothing wrong with your story going, let's examine the relationship of war to men and women. And the question could be, therefore, are women less likely to go to war than men? That sounds like a fantastic theme to explore, in which case you would have all these different scenes, battling it out. Which one is this? In some scenes, you think, no, women are just as likely to go to war as men. No, they're actually not. And you'd be fighting this battle throughout until you come to the conclusion that is true within the world of the story. Not saying anything necessarily about ours.
They seem to be heavy-handed about that in the one episode where the two met, Alicent and Rhaenyra met in the Sept. That was the one time where I was like, oh God, please don't suggest that they're going to patch this up because of their gender, and they didn't though. So to me, that broke down that if that was their theory, that women are unwarlike and will always choose peace and men will not. Well, they ruined that themselves after episode 3, because the two women could not stop the war, nor would they surrender their claim. So they're no different. The only thing that they're suggesting that they're different about is that they tried to stop the war. That's the only thing maybe they're suggesting that two women in leadership would do that two men would not. Maybe. But at the end of the day, the war is happening. They haven't stopped anything. Neither one. Surrender your claim. Let your family get mowed down. Great. Thank you. You're so great at preventing war. Not going to happen.
Fletcher says, Heath, I think you're missing the theme of the series. So I was going to ask you, okay, then what is the theme of this series? And Fletcher said, but Fletcher already answered. Fletcher says the theme is Westerosi families would rather go to war and die than accept having a woman ruling over the 7 kingdoms. I don't think that's a theme.
That was suggested early in season 1.
Well, I know, but that could be a statement of fact in the world, but that's not a story theme. That's not a story theme.
Yeah, in fact, I think what Fletcher is saying is more heavy-handed in terms of implications in the actual show. Or in the marketing of the show. There's been a few comments to that they'll never let a woman rule. But that's not why people are going to war. That may be.
Some houses are fine with letting a woman rule.
Right, well, and I'm saying even if that's an issue, it's one of many issues. Obviously, like we said, the logic of power. If Heath takes the throne and by Heath taking the throne, my kids are now going to be a threat and they're going to have to be eliminated by the logic of power. Well, do I just say, okay? Or do I say, no, I'm going to defend my family. I'm going to challenge, Heath on this level. And Heath is like, I'm going to then we go to war. It's not just because of the woman issue. That may be like, if there's a pie chart, there's one little sliver where that is a factor, but there are 50 other factors in that pie chart on why people are behaving the way they are. It's not, I think the politically correct or the buzzy way to frame this is that, but that's clearly, if just by watching the actions and judgments of the people, that's not sustaining everybody's decision anymore. That seemed to be more of a contention when Viserys named Rhaenyra. When he first named Rhaenyra, there was some pushback on that. And I thought that was handled fairly well, but we're way past that. Just like like he said, we're way past the misunderstanding when King Viserys was on his deathbed. And that's part of the logic of power. It doesn't matter what started the fight, right? Doesn't matter at this point because no one's going to back down. We're stuck in this. Yeah, Rhaenys was the true heir.
Like if you told me that the theme because a theme is a question. So this is a statement. Like we've talked about this a lot on the story. If you tell me the theme is a statement. Westerosi families would rather go to war and die than have a woman ruling over the Seven Kingdoms. That's not a theme. The theme could be a question. Will people accept a woman ruler? Now that could be a theme. Will people accept a woman? And then we're going to have this whole story where we're going to go back and forth and we're going to wrestle with this question. Will they accept it? Will they not? And then maybe at the end we come to the answer that no, people will not accept a female ruler. Okay, we could come to that. But if you start with the idea, that would be like starting with Star Wars. Star Wars saying the Force is the right answer. Okay, then you don't have a theme. Because that whole movie was trying to determine whether or not technology or the Force was the right answer. If you start by saying, my theme is the Force is the way to go, your story is going to suck.
So let me, I'm agreeing with you. Let me keep that up there for 1 second. If you don't mind. I agree with Heath, but I want to modify one word. You said that that's a statement, not a theme. I would say that is a premise, not a theme. The premise is that Westerosi families would rather go to war and die rather than accept a woman to the throne of the Seven Kingdoms. That's a premise, but let me say this. That premise lasted about 3 episodes. So that's not even really the premise. That was the premise presented to us in the marketing. That was what they presented this. And then, like what he said, there is a theme that is suggested that women wouldn't go to war and men would. Again, that's what they say the theme is, but clearly, just by watching the show, that is not the theme of the actual show we're watching because women haven't demonstrated any superiority in preventing the Civil War. They've been part of the problem just as much as the men. So whether they say this is the premise, whether they say that's the theme, my point is none of that's true. The real themes are what happens when the logic of power takes hold, and we're there, and what happens to ego playing a part, what happens to tradition and heritage, what happens to social climbers like Laris, when all of these factors are taken into account, what happens? And I think that the theme is the fall of the House Targaryen. I think that's a better theme for this. How do the Invincible muck it up? How do they wreck themselves? I think that's a little bit more of a theme. Or no, that's actually, I'm going to take that back. That's more of a premise. The premise is the destruction of an invincible house.
The physical layer, because the theme is not the physical layer. It's told to the physical layer. But if you say this is going to be physically what you're seeing on screen is going to be the destruction of House Targaryen. Okay, we're going to go from high to low. Okay, but that doesn't tell me what on the invisible layer of the story this is about, because there can be a lot of different things that might take House Targaryen from high to low. Okay,
Well, I would say that a theme is miscommunication. That's one theme where people get things wrong and then things go sideways. So there is something fascinating about a misunderstanding that cannot be corrected. There have been several of those. Damon committing to an assassination in which he said he thought he was helping, but he's hurting. The deathbed scenario. There's no communication from Damon right now. So miscommunication and how people communicate seem to be one theme. Yeah. That's still a theme, right? Whether it was by design or not, miscommunication still does play a role in this. And Otto Hightower could not have engineered a misunderstanding directly on the deathbed. That was a misunderstanding that occurred organically. What Hightower did that was brilliant was nudge along an eventual relationship between his daughter and the king, because now he's got a horse in the race. So, he did do that. There is definitely some plotting.
Here's where we're talking about. I'm going to bring up what Fletcher says here. Okay. As in Star Wars, we have the Rebel Alliance and the Empire. Okay. So we have the physical layer, we have Imperial power, and we have the rebels fighting for freedom. That's what's on the physical layer. But then on the immaterial layer, which is what our theme is about faith versus technology. And critically, one of the things that movie does so well is that there are advocates of both faith and technology on both sides. Darth Vader on the evil side is our advocate of faith. Grand Moff Tarkin is our advocate of technology. On the good side, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is the advocate of faith, and then we have Han Solo, who's the advocate of technology. And so this is fought here. So if we're talking about this is my problem with the team. Like, I want to question: do we want Team Black or Team Green? That would be like saying that's on the physical layer. So, like, hey, who's going to win, the Empire or the Rebellion? That's talking about on the physical layer. I am looking for something for Team Black and Team Green to represent.
Right. That's the players in the conflict. That's not a theme.
Yeah. And so what if they were doing something like a Star Wars thing, we would say, we're going to be fighting out this physical struggle between these two branches of these houses. But we want to know whether honesty or arrogance, or what is right. Then you would put people on both sides of these who are arguing this back and forth. I've never found that I have a particular reason to feel particular to be on either side. I haven't found the need to be on either side.
In the real world, you mean?
They haven't given me a reason to. Another thing that comes up quite a bit. Okay. Now, actually, let's back up from this a moment with the Game of Thrones, because one of the big questions that I think, I think that George R.R. Martin does this masterfully, because he comes right up to the edge that he actually gives you the question, but he doesn't give you the answer. Like, when you start giving you the answer, we talk about how that becomes preachy and things like that. Because in Game of Thrones, I think that George R.R. Martin did have a character articulate the question. And this was the riddle. I believe this was Varys talking to Tyrion about where does power lie. I would say that is a major theme throughout Game of Thrones. What is the source of power? We have a lot of different characters that have a lot of different answers about what the source of power is. And we are watching them fight on the physical layer, like fight to find out, like, what is the answer to this question about where does power come from?
Well, okay, right. That's a Star Wars theme, but I would say another one for this one is small things having huge consequences, right? And how muddy these things can get. So, like Rhaenyra, she was supposedly the rightful heir, right? And Alicent was the interloper, but Alicent had Targaryen children, and then the rightful heir, Rhaenyra, had an adulterous affair, and had these illegitimate children. So you see these small things. I remember when the first time she started sleeping with that guy, I think Lord Strong. Okay. And we got the dark hair. I was like, oh, that's a problem. And then it skips ahead and she's got like 5 kids, all with brown hair. And I'm like, oh, now this is a problem, because now she's muddied the waters on the legitimacy of not herself so much, but her heirs. Right. So you're getting small events that accumulate into bigger, almost like deadly problems. I think that's a theme. Small events that turn into bigger problems. That's a theme. You know, what if you make a little mistake in the realm of power, and that little mistake grows into something large, you know, something minor. So, you know, I would say that's one of the themes.
I would say something they are talking about very explicitly. And again, which, if this is going to be a theme, which it could be, I would have them not do so as explicitly. But
well, what about loyalty of blood over loyalty of self?
Okay, talk more about that. That wasn't where I was going, but talk more about that.
Oh, well, go ahead and go where you were going, though.
Okay, so you asked me, what is the theme of a major theme of Game of Thrones is, where does power lie? What is the source of power? What is the actual source of power?
Well, but keep in mind, we've seen the end of Game of Thrones. We haven't seen the end of this.
But I think that George R. R. Martin has been very well articulating that. I don't think that the show articulated that theme as well. That's why I withhold judgment on what the ultimate theme of Game of Thrones is, because George R. R. Martin has not finished his stories yet.
Sure.
But he does seem to me to be asking the question about what is the source of power. And then has a whole bunch of characters fight this out. But also, when you're talking about, okay, the power, which does also go back to Game of Thrones, is touched on in Game of Thrones, and it's touched on here. And I think this is a very interesting idea about, here's the question I would ask. Can the sovereign do as he wills? This is a fantastically, I think, interesting question. And I would set so that was the theme. So here we're on the physical layer, we'll have dragons, we'll have armies, we'll have swords. Or you could say, I'm going to do a science fiction one. I have spaceships, I have lasers, I have whatever. But I'm going to ask the question, can the sovereign do what he wills? Because you might think
that's a universal question.
On a surface level, you might think that, that's why you'd want to be the king. Because once you're the king, what you say goes. But in Game of Thrones, we did see occasionally, I think you can occasionally have a character ask the question that is your theme. Okay, I think that sometimes that works. But if you ever give the answer that I'm with Maxwell Alexander explicitly, if you explicitly give the answer, like verbally, then you're lost.
Okay. Well, I have an answer for you, or an answer, not the answer.
Okay.
I think one universal question, which plays right into theme, is when every claim to the throne is flawed, which one is the most ethical? You know, which one is right? If they're all wrong or they're all flawed, then which one's right?
That has to do with the source of power. Yeah, I'm with you. That's the source of power. What is this source? Like the riddle that Barry's posted was okay. Go with it.
All I was going to say was, it's not just about power right now, at least in this story. This story is about competing claims, all of which have pros and cons. All of them are flawed. Who's right? Right? Like, we're all sitting there going, oh, she's kind of got a claim. Oh, she's kind of got a claim. Oh, he's got his point. You know, Damon's got his point. Rhaenyra has a claim, but illegitimate children. You know, Alicent, she doesn't have a claim, but her kids have legitimacy. And Daemon was passed over originally for Viserys. You know, like, so so if every claim is flawed, what do you do? Like, I think that is a universal question of power, not what is the source of power necessarily. They're similar questions. I will say that. I do think they're similar, because I think the answer is I think power is the answer. Whoever has the power is going to take that throne. And in this case, they all have some power, and they're all going to claim that throne.
Well, okay. Let me put a pin in that, because I want to go. Let me make a note about something that George R. Martin
Fletcher,
said.
I just want to say this real quick to Fletcher, and I know he's kind of joking, but that's the whole point of Table Talk. He
said this discussion is interesting. Thank you. I like
that. I do appreciate that, and I know he's kind of joking. He's not like being mean spirited or anything when he says this. It's just fiction. It's not that.
Oh,
deep.
here. Well, okay. I was gonna address this as well. Go ahead.
Right. I'm just, and I know he's saying that tongue in cheek. All I wanted to say was that's what we do on Table Talk. We look at fiction, we look at storytelling and how it's put together. And Heath will ask tough questions about theme or premise or meaning or structure or plot or dialogue, and we'll unpack this stuff. And I have my whole life found a lot of purpose and meaning in taking fictional stories from human beings and trying to break them open to see what's inside. And great stories, there's a lot there, and really hollow stories, there's nothing there. I do think there are themes in this, and I'm doing my best to articulate them. But that doesn't mean I'm right. It's just this is my best attempt. And Heath is raising a lot of valid questions.
No, you're not sounding rude at all. I'm
not at all. That's why I wanted to
have you in the comments. This is great. This is great. So okay, wait a minute. I got like several things that are backed up that I need to say. But right, but I don't. But I think this is tongue in cheek. Which you're tongue in cheek.
Yes,
yeah,
I totally did. But I figured
I think because the best fiction I think addresses serious themes, and it does it in a serious way. That's not a preachy way, which has to do with the don't articulate at least the answer to your question, the answer to your theme. But I think that's one of the reasons why we, and I say that's kind of a collective we, are drawn to fiction because especially when it's not explicit, like something that's not explicit, but that what do we internalize when we watch something like Star Wars? Or we articulate, or we watch or read the best of our fiction. What is it that is we are internalizing, and what is being taught? I think that's really important. I want to go. Oh my God! Look who we got here. I want to go back to the idea of the sovereign and why would you even want to be the king? Okay, but you know who we just had? We just had Retro Nerd Girl up here.
Oh, really?
So let's bring Retro in. Yeah, Retro Nerd Girl is here. Retro Nerd Girl is here, everyone.
Hey, Retro!
Hi, guys. I'm sorry I don't have a visual today. It's just really wild here. But
could be a solar flare that's affecting your base station up there.
Yes, and we're having some technical difficulties.
That's awesome.
No problem.
How are you doing? Have you been listening in to the conversation at all, or
I haven't? I just jumped in. I actually am supposed to do a stream very soon, but I postponed it. I postponed it for 30 minutes, so I got an hour. I can hang out for about maybe 50 minutes with you guys. I can't believe
all right. Well, we'll send everybody over to your stream when this is done.
Okay.
That's awesome. Well, folks in the chat, we are honored to have RNG with us tonight.
Oh, you guys, I thank you for inviting me. I absolutely love this show. So I am just so jazzed to be able to talk about it with somebody because
so
we were talking about themes of story.
Right. So I have been mostly enjoying it. I think Heath has too, but Heath
I have. Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah, it sounds like Heath's enjoying it, but he has a lot of questions that he feels dissatisfied with, or that the show is not properly addressing, perhaps. And some of that discussion revolves around, what are the themes of this show? He feels that the themes are not well defined. And so Heath, myself, and definitely Fletcher, and then a few other members of the chat have been kind of wrestling with this. We know the show isn't complete, but we're trying to address themes versus premise versus players in the conflict versus plot points, or is it just bad writing in this case, or is the script not clear? I mean, that's what this has been revolving around.
Okay. I'm listening.
Okay, let me give. I was going to give my notes about the sovereign and freedom of action, because I saw this come up a couple of times, and I thought that it was interesting. First of all, that King Robert Baratheon talks about this in Game of Thrones, and then both Aegon and Rhaenyra talk about this in House of the Dragon. So this would be an interesting question. If we're talking about theme as a question on the invisible layer. Can a sovereign do as he wills? And on the surface level, the idea would be, well, that's why you would want to become king. Because if you're a king,
Good to be
or
the
queen,
king.
whatever, there's good to be the king, right? Because then you're going to be able to do whatever it is that you want. You're the king, you say something, and it happens. But on the other side, you could say, listen, because if you're invested with this ultimate sovereign authority, that what you say goes. Okay, that seems rather straightforward. Excuse me. But in other cases, you can say that actually our power structures are much more complicated than that. And the king, or sovereign in general, king or queen, with the sovereign's actions are very constrained, that you actually can't. And Robert Baratheon says this in Game of Thrones. He says explicitly, so he's on the side that those sovereigns have their freedom of action constrained. He's like, I thought that being king meant that I could do whatever I wanted, and that he found out that's not true. He's got a bunch of people and a bunch of advisors telling him to do this and this, not, and blah, 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 blah. And so he's clearly on the other side. You know, that, okay, actually, I thought this way, and then I found out that's not true. Aegon talks like this in this. I think it's interesting that both Aegon and Rhaenyra, both of our opposite physical sides, both end up on this early on the same immaterial level, because Aegon is like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't even know what. Don't do anything. You're just, we got you to the, Alicent, bizarrely or whatever, they said, no, don't do anything. He's like, I can't, nobody listens to me. I'm the king. I say things and no one cares. That I don't have any freedom of action. I've got all this. And Rhaenyra says the same thing in her council. And, that's aggravating, because I thought, especially in episode 6, when Rhaenyra is talking and she's like, well, I was going to go and fly over here and blah, 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 and do all of this, but I was told that that's a bad idea from, all of my advisors. Mm-hmm. And so both of them are feeling like the sovereigns are extremely constrained in their actions.
I would say that's a theme.
Yeah.
To me, that's a theme.
I would ask, so that seems like something you would ask, but they are both coming to, but you could tell a story about this, like the U.S. president or somebody becomes the U.S. president, and you think, now I'm the president, whatever I say goes. Look at all these things I'm going to change. But then, you could have the next scene. All right, I've just been sworn in as president, and then you're in the Oval Office, and then all the guys in black suits walk in from the intelligence agencies and tell you how this world actually works.
You have
and why you're not actually going to be able to do everything you say
you're out.
Right, but here's what it actually goes on. And then you suddenly realize, oh, maybe I actually don't have the kind of freedom of action I thought I was going to have now as president.
So, well, I would say that's a theme. In a monarchy where the monarch has absolute power, where does power really lie? Obviously, the monarch doesn't seem to have it in several scenes, whether it's a man or a woman. And then in other scenes, the monarch seems to have, especially in Game of Thrones, when they make the call, everyone listens. So what are the components of that? What are the components of having people follow your orders or will in that? So Retro, let me ask you, what do you think the themes are of House of Dragon? If you had to extract or pull out what you think are themes, to the best of your ability, it's not a completed show, but based on what we've seen so far, what do you think the themes are?
For me, it seems like it's a theme about how the people in power really are playing a chess game or playing games amongst each other for power, while the people on the lower end, or the small folk, or the other pieces on the board, if you will, the chess game, are expendable.
Yeah, the people
And
who don't have the power.
yeah, so I think that's where I'm really getting how even the dragons are expendable.
Ooh, yeah, that's true.
So like
Yeah, they traded that one dragon's head through the
yeah,
streets.
they don't care. All of the people in power are just they're not great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, there are no sides on this that some are a little less cringy than others.
Well, okay, so one of my speculations on themes was, because usually a theme can be framed as a question. You know, what is the role of women in society? That was the theme of Faraway Bird. That was like the unit, what I call the universal question. And like we did Raiders of the Lost Ark, the universal question is, what do we do with objects that are, you know, invaluable, you know, priceless objects found in the earth that have no owner? Do we use them for personal gain? Well, then you're on Team Belloc. Or do we preserve them for education and for all time's sake? Well, then you're on Team Indiana Jones. You know, that, you know, that's the blacks or the greens in that theme, that universal question. I thought one of the universal questions here is, if all claims to power are equally flawed, who wins? You know, what's the answer? You know,
I love that as a continuing question of George R. R. Martin's world. I do like that. I want to say that Fletcher says, when I was talking about can the sovereign do as he wills, I believe this is what Fletcher was responding to. Say that to Aemond. Yes, right. So that's why I actually think that, assuming that you actually you drive forward with the conflict in this show, that it's much more interesting to have Aemond and Rhaenyra in conflict, because they both have this different philosophical stance, this invisible layer stance. Because Aemond is definitely like, now of course he's Prince Regent now, but he's invested with the monarchical authority, the sovereign's authority, and he's like, I'm doing this. I mean, he gets right up. I did love that scene. He's like, all right, there's no question. I'm gonna get right up and walk across this table. I'm gonna pick up the king's ball. I'm gonna set it down, and I'm gonna start telling people what to do. So he has a very different approach to that question than does Rhaenyra. And that's why I actually thought that it was bad. I mean, I noticed specifically that both Aegon and Rhaenyra, two different sides on the physical level, both happen to have the same immaterial level approach to, you know, the realization of the constraints on the monarch. And I thought that's kind of odd. So I actually think that Aemon's approach, like, there is no constraint on my authority. Like, I'm the Prince Regent now. I'm invested. That contrasts with Rhaenyra much better. And so having them not only on different physical sides, but having them also represent different immaterial level ideas, I think is better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very interesting analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good portion, but it's not the main theme of the entire story. You know what I mean? It's not the entire thing, but it's a great, like, little piece, because then you still have like season 1, and there's possibly going to be a season 3 and 4, maybe, and 5.
Oh, wow.
Well, because if you look at the entire story, they have a lot more to cover.
Okay, that's right. You are very familiar with the book.
Yeah.
And by the way, Retro Fletcher in the chat is very in tune with what the book is.
You've got the book. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I did. I decided that I'm gonna read it after the TV show. I was reading Brianna's book, but we actually, Doug and I were talking about that maybe after the TV show, because I'm not gonna be able to finish this book in the next 2 weeks. Should we go through this whole book and then rewatch the entire entire series, and then do a deep dive live stream on it? That's what we should.
Yeah. I mean, because this is just a fight for power. And how, I suppose, the reason why we're even looking at this is is basically detailing how the dragons became. They at one point were in many numbers, and now by the time you get to Game of Thrones, there's like only 3 left, right? So that
Oh yeah, and the dragons get smaller and smaller, and they're kind of like exiled, and Daenerys is being horse traded to like overseas, like and Viserys in Game of Thrones, he's not admirable at all, and that's what's left of House Targaryen when we pick up with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, they lost everything, and they lost their their precious throne at the keep.
Yeah,
Go
ahead.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just don't want to cut you off early, but so I was telling Heath, I think the premise of the show is the fall of the House Targaryen. How does a house that's invincible with seemingly all the power, a deep bench, they have all these great family members, and an unprecedented era of peace, they have a monopoly on the dragons, total legitimacy in their claim to the throne. How does this perfect position, how does it unravel to the point of nothingness? And I think that's a great premise.
Yeah, and it starts where the season 1 begins with Viserys and his issue with not being able to produce a male heir, and that from his first wife, and looking towards his daughter as the heir and naming her the heir before he was able to sire sons with Alicent. And so that really is the start of the problem, and also like, okay, how things are really supposed to go down, that's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to go to the male heirs. And so you've got a lot of people who are like, okay, we'll do what you say, Viserys, but really would like to have a dude in there. We'd like to have a son, one of his sons, his actual legitimate sons, to be on board as the heir.
And I think that was a theme in season 1. It has not been much of a theme in season 2.
Well, all of this is connected. It's the same. It's just a connected story, because we're still dealing with the aftermath of that. And
sure.
The whole point of it is that Rhaenyra was looked over as the possible queen, so that Viserys could be the king. And so here we have the situation where it's like, okay, we've already established the way this society works, and we're kind of breaking the rules of the society to make Rhaenyra queen, whether she's worthy or not. And we all know that she was being groomed and knew certain things that no one else knew, but I don't really feel like she's really worthy of being a queen. She was trained, but I don't think that she is a good person.
You talking about Rhaenyra?
Yeah, she's not. She's not really I mean, she isn't. She just wants that throne because that was her. At this point, that's what her father promised her.
Right. So now I agree with that. And I did mention that earlier when I was talking about how each claim has its own problems. Alicent had no claim, but her sons are legitimate. Rhaenyra has total claim, but her sons are all illegitimate. So now what? Right? Now what? Now they're both screwed. So now it starts to break down to power.
Well, Alicent never had a claim, right?
Correct. She never had a claim. She just kind of
Alicent never had a claim.
Was there for the king.
If anyone was going to have a claim, it was going to be her son.
Mm-hmm.
Her sons have a good claim, and they're legitimate. Whereas Rhaenyra, cheated on her husband, who wasn't interested in having babies with her anyway, and had all these illegitimate sons. And it got to be a real problem when there's like 5 of them with brown hair. So now these little mistakes, these little issues that seem benign in episode 3 are becoming catastrophic. to the secession issue by episode 8. I'm talking about season 1.
Yeah.
So I do think what Fletcher is saying and what Retro is saying about women being allowed to have power was absolutely a theme and a good theme in season 1. But what I'm saying is I don't see that theme even that relevant at this point in season 2. Season 2, it's now we're slugging it out. And so you're probably going to find different themes as this plays out.
Yeah, because I feel like at this point, everyone is proving that they're not worthy of really the throne.
Exactly.
And like not one of them are have the capacity, the empathy to actually rule over other people.
Right.
And Rhaenyra, even from season 1, you can see the arrogance in her. Like, I am a princess, she is very arrogant and still is. I mean, her slapping that one guy this week was kind of an example of like, these guys are volunteering. They're in a very vulnerable situation, and she's just slapping this guy. And it is because she wants to show that she is intimidating. But at the same time, yes, you can have that intimidation, but she isn't really capable. I don't think she's really capable of being queen, except for just saying like, you do this, you do that, you do that. I'm queen, but I don't think that she's actually looking out for the people necessarily.
Well, when she slapped him and said, "I think it's my fault that you have forgotten to fear me," I mean, I could not help but immediately think of Machiavelli. I mean, this is very Machiavellian. What do you want as sovereign? Do you want to be loved or feared? This is a classic question, which could be an excellent theme for a story that is brought forward by Niccolo Machiavelli. He says, is it better to be loved or feared? And of course, Machiavelli answers that in his treatise that you must be feared. So that would be a theme that could be asked. We're going to have one of these two assert their right to the throne based on being loved, because people love them so much, and another one is going to take the approach that I'm going to be your king or your sovereign because you will fear me. Okay, now that's operating on the immaterial level. Which is better, to be loved or to be feared? In that moment, Rhaenyra took the case kind of that, wait a minute, I am supposed to be feared. And that's a good one to go. Now, but on the other hand, we don't have on the other side, it's not like we have Aemon saying that I'm going to be loved. That was much more a thing. Which queen was it? Oh my God, I can't forget this. Renly's queen, who then later married Tommen. She was, I'm going to be loved. Marjorie, I'm going to be loved. Okay, and that's why people I will be loved.
What was that movie? It was like a Brooklyn love story where it's like modern day New York or a gangster era New York, and they asked that question. Is it better to be feared or loved? And the mobster goes, fear, because fear lasts longer. And that was a pretty definitive answer.
Yeah. That's a great question. That's a great theme to build a story around. Like, that's not talking about, we could tell this just the theme of, is it better to be loved or feared?
I agree. That's
in science fiction, in fantasy, in modern day, whatever. That's a theme. So to me, a theme is something that could be told. The story can be told in multiple settings, in multiple worlds, in multiple genres. So that's I guess that's a reason why the theme can't be the fall of the Targaryens, because I can't tell the fall of the Targaryens.
No,
the Targaryens are in this big world. Yeah, that's why that's not a theme. A theme I can explore. A theme I can explore in multiple stories, in multiple genres, in multiple worlds.
Right. The premise is the fall of House Targaryen. That's the premise of the story. Themes tend to be a little bit more intimate, based on a question that has different answers, and then different characters embody the different answers. Like we were talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Belloc embodies, Hitler embodies, this is what you do with artifacts that have power. You use them for yourself. You take them for yourself.
Yeah.
And
I don't think we need to. we don't need to
Well,
go.
that's
Like, I
right.
know that in the comment section we're having a terminological difference because
Well,
I don't feel like we need
it's
to go there.
important to
We talked about that.
define.
It's important.
It's
Yeah,
important to define
define our
what we're
themes. The way
talking
we
about.
talk about theme, like if we talked about the theme of the original Star Wars movie, the theme is not Empire versus the Rebellion, as
That's
we
the
have ever talked
conflict.
about
That's
it,
the conflict.
that's the physical level conflict. So some people might say, no, the theme is the physical level conflict. The theme of the original Star Wars movie is Empire versus Rebellion.
Well, and that's why
That's not the way we use
separating
that term.
those out, because we're not going to
It's-
have a general discussion.
It's
The
important
semantics
to
here
understand
matter.
the different terminology. Yeah. So terminology. I think some things are terminological differences. So I think we can set those aside.
Well, and Fletcher, themes can recur and fade. They can come and they go. I do think that I guess what are we going to call it? The legit, women in power is a theme in Game of Thrones. It's a theme in House of the Dragon. That is a theme. What I'm saying is that theme is largely missing now in season 2. Doesn't mean it's gone. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter and it'll never come back. But in season 2 so far, the themes seem to be elsewhere. They seem to be something other than that basic theme about women's legitimacy to power. At that point, where we are in season 2, that doesn't matter.
Because this is a really hard one to say, because especially the way this story is written, it's almost like you're going through like different generations of situations, because it's almost like, can you tell me the theme of the last like 30 years of your life? And there are like lots of different themes going on at the same time, because
Correct.
maybe right now what we're going through, as an idea is, who is, or is there anyone capable of ruling over Westeros?
Legitimacy is a theme, I would say. What is legitimacy? Who is legitimate?
Right. I mean,
at this stage.
And also, yeah, and also that's going to play a little bit more when we get to the dragon seeds, and who is more, who is going to be able to ride the dragons, and you've got to have a certain amount of lineage in order to do that. And I mean, that is probably, maybe lineage has something to the legitimacy and lineage, but also these guys are making a huge mess of the kingdom. There's so many people are dying because of them. It's just they're driving a lot of people to starvation. They're not when you look back on how Viserys ruled, I mean, he ruled probably didn't rule the way people wanted him to rule, but at least people were fed and they seemed happy, and nobody was dying. There were less wars. But this is at this point in time, it's really a shame, because they are like destroying everything.
Yeah. Well, but that's why we like
it. It's like a domino effect, because they can't stop it. Right. They can't stop it until it's done.
Right. And so that's why I think it's important to identify the premise, because the premise is also compelling, right? It's not making us think about ethical questions necessarily. The premise is what's hooking us and keeping us captivated in the show. When you say it's a show about the fall of the House Targaryen when they were at the pinnacle of their power, that is a sustaining premise. It's like, oh, let's see how this plays out. Let's see. It doesn't matter what the themes are. I just want to see how this great house falls apart. Now, while we tell that story, themes are going to emerge, and I think those themes come and go. And this all began. I think Heath had said early on in this conversation that this show doesn't have a main theme, or what? How did you word it? I don't want to speak.
I have been struggling to identify the theme of this show. That's why I brought up this question. What is the theme of this show?
I agree that the theme, because there's so many different ones. I mean, because to me, legitimacy is a big part, but then there's also corruption. There is also Damon's storyline where he's transforming and is going through his issues, and then the dragon seeds who are seeking their own place in the world. They've all been misplaced, and what's to come is I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but they're suddenly going to be swept into a different life, and so that's another thing. Yeah, there are so many different themes, especially with Allison. Allison is her situation. That's an interesting theme, like how you can screw up so bad that you cause the death of thousands of people. Like and destroy your children. And each one, to see her have to go through all of that. And
so let me say, Retro and Fletcher, that's why it's hard to say this doesn't have themes, because as far as I'm concerned, because
there are
multiple themes. Okay, the legitimacy of a woman leading the nation, that's a theme, and Fletcher is 100% right. But that's not a major theme right now. That has gone quiet. There's other themes coming and going. Once the story is told, then we could see what one of the dominant overarching themes of the story is. And if it's a good theme, it'll help us remember the story all the better. In Star Wars, we know that there's some discussion about technology versus faith. But that point isn't driven home until Luke turns off his targeting computer at the end of the movie and blows up the Death Star based on intuition or using the Force. So then we can look at the whole story and be like, man, that theme, although it was sprinkled throughout, as are other themes, the theme between technology and faith was one of the dominant themes of the story. We can't get there yet. And to what you're saying in the chat, Fletcher, and Retro, what you're alluding to, suggests to me that all these themes we're talking about may not be the dominant theme. These are simply other themes that are occurring. Once we get to the end of this, I think we'll get a good idea what the dominant overarching theme. I don't know.
Maybe so. If you've got multiple stuff going on, then you probably don't have a theme. That's a bold statement right there. Right?
Well, I wouldn't say that yet. I would say
we don't know. We don't know, right? But I'm still trying to figure this out. But we've got this. I just want to say that a lot of this is just terminological difficulties. But I'm looking at the dynamic story creation when we're talking about this. The theme is the human idea the author wants the reader to contemplate on the invisible level, which is how I use the term. That's why theme can't be black versus green, because that's not something that is. The subject is the foundation of the story, the physical layer. So the subject is this conflict between blacks and greens. And
that's like the Empire versus the Rebellion. That's not a theme. Those are the two.
What are you talking about? I hope Jar Jar Martin doesn't listen to this, doesn't have a theme. Damn. No, what are you talking about? That's completely contrary to everything that I just said. I said that George R. R. Martin, I thought, in the Game of Thrones series, which is yet to be finished, has a very strong theme that didn't come through in the television adaptation. I don't know. I'm not watching George R. R. Martin's work. I got George R. R. Martin's work right here. I don't know what the theme is in this book because I have not read this book. All I'm doing right now is watching the television show, which is an adaptation of his work, and I'm not sure.
Well, let me say this though:
this could have a very strong theme. George R. R. Martin could have provided a very strong theme in this. I have no idea because I have not read this book yet.
Well, but keep in mind that book is written like a history book. It summarizes events, it doesn't fictionalize them through narration and characterization and dialogue, except very briefly in few snippets. And the narrator of that book his name is Mushroom, and he's an unreliable narrator, and they come right out in the open with this in that book. So that experience of reading that book will be very different, and themes are less important in the abstraction of events of nations than in a personalized story where you're actually filling in the characters and they're interacting and there's dialogue and we're intimately involved with the characters. So the chance for themes I think are a little bit more profound in the TV version.
Yeah, and there really are a lot of things going on in the story. But I think, yeah, for the book, it isn't gonna give us a lot of like. It's just really like this happens and to this character, and then Lord such and such one did this thing, and then 50 armies came and did this other thing, and it's
Right,
very much
summarizing
like,
events.
yeah, it's really like groups everything together, like as if somebody was telling the story of your life for like the last 10 years. Like,
But you
oh,
think that
they
means
went.
there's no theme in the book?
No. It's not that there isn't a theme. I can't think of the idea of the theme except for what a big mess this caused, or what what a big mess this is. It was like the spiraling of a situation, like almost like a domino effect, because of like one thing led to another, and then there's no more dragons, like, or very few dragons left, and which is a shame because it destroyed all of that. But there was always somebody on the throne, of course, and so that's kind of all I got, was sort of like, wow. It was almost like reading, like watching a car crash or something, where
Yes.
it's like watching a tragedy happen, and having the pleasure of being in your own home and the safety of your own place, and not in the middle of the war.
So I agree with you on that. I had said there's a certain Schadenfreude, and it's compelling to watching something invincible collapse. And I jokingly refer to Disney. They were invincible in 2019. Now they can't seem to get anything right. What the heck happened to this invincible company now that they can't even make a movie, or barely can. So, something happened, and watching it play out is in and of itself compelling. Did you see Fall of the House of Usher, the new one on Netflix, Retro?
No.
Okay, that's similar. It's based on the Edgar Allan Poe story about a house that
You said that it's new?
I love that story, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I saw the original, not the original, I don't know if there was one.
1960.
Yeah, with Vincent Price?
Yes. Okay, so they redid it. Now they updated it for modern audiences. However, it's excellent. It's excellent. And they really go deep with it. And whoever did it does have a love of Edgar Allan Poe, because they tie in a lot of his other stories. There's like a company called Fortunato, which, is a homage to a Cask of Amontillado.
Which I also love.
I love that. I had to do in college, I had to write a dissertation, or not a dissertation, a story. I had to pick a story and write it from an alternative point of view. So I rewrote Cask of Amontillado from Fortunato's point of view. And there's this idiot leading him in to show him something, and he ends up getting entombed by, this guy he was underestimating. Anyway, the show, Fall of the House of Usher, is excellent. It's a new one, but it's the same idea as what I'm pointing out. The premise is the same. It's the collapse of this seemingly invincible house. And now I want to know why, how. I want to watch this catastrophe play out. It's compelling for whatever reason.
Let me give you a couple of other things here. Here's where I lost all respect for Rhaenyra. Okay. And it goes with this idea, and I guess I would articulate it something like, how much personal risk should you undertake in order to press your claim to the throne? This is a great question. Something like that is a great question. And Rhaenyra has answered this question extremely poorly, in my opinion. Okay. That, like, what is this all about? This is all from her perspective, the Black's perspective. This is about her right to the Iron Throne.
Yes.
And if she won't even fly a dragon out and wage, fight on her own behalf, then why should anyone else fight for her? Like, that's one answer to that question. Like, if all I do is I just sit around here in Dragonstone and I, talk to the mealy mouth, advisors and whatever. And she was even articulating the constraints that she has as the sovereign. I'd go out there and fly to war and do something, but my advisors tell me I had better just sit here and not risk myself. At that point, I was like, you lost all respect right there, because this is your claim. It's your body. Your physical body should be bearing the brunt of this conflict. You and you've got a dragon too, that you should be at the forefront of it. And she articulated I can't risk myself, my physicality, because my advisors tell me I can't. And so I'm not
that's
really
like a captivity bargain.
And I would be
too
like,
essential to risk.
You're right. That if you are if I'm pressing this claim, then my body will be in the forefront of this. There is a counter to that, which I thought, okay, there is a counter to that, which if they were interested in exploring, they would do. But apparently so far they have not. The counter to that would be like, if you die, and this is the conversation that I would have had her lord say, like, listen, if you die, then our situation becomes more dire. Because if you die, the claim, your claim would then pass to, the son, was Jake or whatever. You pass not Luke, because Luke is already dead, but the other son, and we get weaker. Every layer we have to go to, our claim gets weaker. People are going to leave, and we, the lords who are supporting you, are going to be killed because we are treasonous, right? Because we were supporting you, and so if you die, then it's going to risk us, because the argument that she should have made is that it's me. This is my claim. If I'm not willing to risk myself over it, then why should anybody else be willing to risk themselves? And their counter should have been, we're risking ourselves, and if you die, then we're all dead. So if you, our sovereign, care about us, you will preserve your own life, because that's the strongest claim that we have.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That is implied in any war. Whoever you raise your banners for, you risk yourself against the other side. That is part of the territory there.
And she folded. So did Jay say that? So she folded? Because as soon as she agreed to that, that's when I lost.
So, but now think about it. That's interesting, because which woman did ride out on her dragon to fight for that claim?
She was basically sent to her doom.
But that shows, to Heath's point, she would have been a worthy queen had she been named.
That's right. So she was better. She flew out and risked herself.
Right. Yes. So that's a great point, Heath. I love that. And I love that. And that's why I loved episode 4. I love seeing the old queen go, or she's was she a princess at that point?
She was.
I love seeing the old princess go out and fight. She had a big ass dragon. I even got emotional when the dragon looks back at her. And she's like old buddy, we've been doing this for years. And I don't know. I liked Rhaenys. She had the chops to be the ruler of House Targaryen. And I think Heath, you make a great point. Not even being willing to ride out and fight for it says a lot about her. And think about it, even Aegon, who I thought of as kind of an idiot, and he kind of is. At least he went out and fought for it.
Well,
there's a huge difference. I mean, that's not what Fletch just say. Let's go wild and go to war. No, there's a huge gulf of differences between the two things.
Yeah, but
you don't have to go wild and go to war. But if you're unwilling to risk yourself, then that does seem like it's a problem.
He was not supposed to do that.
Right.
He was not supposed to go out in the way he did. But I would say this. It doesn't, Rhaenyra, she is she's in a position right now that is really showing exactly like, okay, she's been getting a lot of information from, or a lot of guidance from Rhaenyra all this time. And so without Rhaenyra there, she's kind of like having to do all of this other stuff, like depend more on the White Worm. Um, and it's really kind of interesting to see her like actually kind of do some strategizing. So I'm kind of in the middle with her. They're all
Well, yeah.
garbage people. I mean,
Yeah,
she's
they're all
kissing
exactly.
she's like cheating on her husband. I don't think so. I don't think that's good.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, what do you do when all claims to the throne are like seriously flawed? You know, who's right? And I would say another possible theme is every decision you make either weakens or reinforces your legitimacy, meaning it's not a foregone conclusion that your claim is legitimate. Maybe you make one decision, like, you know, Aegon or Daemon killing that baby. Well, now you've lost your whatever legitimacy you had. Now that is severely weakened, and the next decision, maybe you get it back. So legitimacy seems to be an ebb and flow in this situation where every decision can make or break you. You know, it's not like you've been dubbed. That's it, and that's the beauty of naming an heir to the throne.
Well,
You alleviate this exact problem.
Maybe you just hit on something. Decisions. Because all of these people are making decisions, but they all seem to be the worst decisions ever.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great point.
Maybe that's part of the theme. If you continuously make the worst decisions ever, what'll happen? Like Daemon, and he's dealing with that with his little nightmares and stuff that he's having. Like the decisions that he made to you know, that led to Blood and Cheese, and you know, all that, like that's all playing in his mind, and also, you know, and has influenced the story greatly. Maybe bad decisions is the theme.
Well, or the organic nature of legitimacy in a series of decisions, you know, because it seems to ebb and flow, you know. You make a few bad calls, and now you had the best claim. You made a bunch of bad decisions, and now this other person who had a shit claim or a bad claim, now they are the ones who have the legitimacy based on this course of events, you know.
Somebody said, you know, it's been mentioned many times, everybody knows where Daemon is. Why didn't Rhaenyra go to see Daemon? Of course, you can't get on your dragon and do anything. So it's really kind of one of those moments where it's like the story is kind of hijacking Rhaenyra to this, you know, to be in this location, this place and time, without doing anything much of like actually strategizing or actually doing something. And perhaps you know, I suppose it stems from the original material, the books, is they're following what's going on in the books. They're adding a lot more for our pleasure on the show, but honestly, like for a while there, it was more like this other person did this thing. She hardly did anything until a little bit later on. I won't say anything. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But she finally like gets some action going. But right now she's very much impotent. And so this whole thing with the barge, to my knowledge, that was not in the story. The barge with the food.
Oh, all those little boats that sailed up and caused the riot.
Yeah. That was not in the story. Was I don't
remember.
Yeah, so I think
I have not read
another contrivance that they added to kind of make it seem like Rhaenyra is doing something, because in this part of the story she's not doing very much in the book. So
yeah, I actually didn't mind that too much because I thought it was a clever way to start a riot. I thought of immediately Black Hawk Down, where people are starving. So the U.S. sends in shipments of food, and what does it do? It causes the warlord to seize it, and more civil unrest ensues, despite the good intentions there. So I thought that was okay. I didn't mind that.
I love all of the extras. To
Yes!
me, like that wasn't in the book. Like all of that extra juicy stuff all that stuff is just like, wow, what a way to explain character motivations.
Oh, I thought you meant something else. I thought you meant like extras, like all the extras in the background.
Oh,
During the riot scene, I particularly admired. There's like 50 extras back there, and they're rushing through the streets, and it really had a lot of energy, like dangerous energy. And I love that. So when you said I loved all the extras, I was like, yeah, me too.
Let me ask you this. So I would also ask this. Does truth matter?
In what sense? Like in general? I would say yes.
As far as the themes of this story go. Because it seems like in the Game of Thrones that George R. Martin is writing, and it seems borne out by his comments that it does not. Now, he's saying, I have not finished his books.
Laws of power, right. The laws of power, truth sometimes is incriminating. So, you make plays to overpower truth if you can in the game of power.
Does truth matter? It seems like so far, like I said, I have not. George R. Martin has not finished his book series, but does truth matter? It seems like George R. Martin's answer is no, it does not. And in fact, when he's talked about in interviews, he talks about it only matters what you can make stick. And I think that's a fantastic theme that could be explored. You're like, the question is, does truth matter? Does truth matter? And one side will be arguing, yes, truth matters. What's true does matter. The other side will be arguing, no, it only matters what you can make stick. That's the only thing that matters. That's what matters. I think that's a great question, and I think that I wish that this were explored more. Like, this could be another fantastic theme of this book. Does it matter that, what's the truth of the situation? Because they made it very explicit in House of the Dragon by making the Valerians black, so that you knew there wasn't any ambiguity as to regard the parentage. Okay, so you could have done that differently, so there would be ambiguity in the parentage. Maybe we don't even know as the audience, but because we have a racial difference in this, it's very obvious what the truth is here. So Rhaenyra is treasonous in her attempt to put, illegitimate children on the throne.
Yes.
That's the truth. Does that matter?
No.
Okay, so the answer is no.
To some people, it doesn't matter because they're just going to follow what Viserys said. He wanted her to be on the throne. There's some people who are like, no, we believe that the young men, her brothers are supposed to are actually supposed to be heirs to the throne. And so that's it. Truth matters about half the time.
Well, I would say the truth matters. The issue is, will powerful people let the truth dethrone them? And the answer is, to the best of their ability, no, they're not going to. So truth serves one side sometimes and goes against the other, one side on another. People who are in power do everything they can to bury incriminating truth. So it matters, but can a powerful person suppress it enough and, in order to get what they're after?
Because the person or the group who wins gets to tell the story.
I'm not even sure that it's, it could be suppression. It could be suppression. But what if the situation is just that, well, these three people have the largest armies and the truth would damage them. So they just choose to ignore it. They didn't suppress it. They're just like, oh, well, we just ignored that.
Well, distort it then. distorted in some way, because somebody is going to ask the people who the truth benefits will fight for that truth. And the people who the truth incriminates will fight against those people. So, and that shifts.
That would be no. That would be no. It does not matter, because you just set up a situation where no one is fighting for truth's sake.
Well, to some extent, what I'm saying is it still matters. If you and me are fighting and we're both corrupt, right? We're both corrupt. I'm hiding something. You're hiding something. But in the end, I come to a point where the truth about you comes out and you can't stop it. I win. I might be able to win at that point. So it matters, but it depends on how it plays out.
But I can't stop it. If I could stop it, because that's what George R. R. Martin said, that the truth doesn't matter. What matters is what you can make stick. So if I can make something stick on you, whether it's true or not, whether it's true that you did something terrible and I stuck it to you, or if I just made this up about you and I stuck it to you, what matters is that I made something stick.
Well, let me say this. It still matters in that it's governing all of our behavior, right? If you stole my Star Wars figure when I was a kid, and I'm pissed about that, right? And I'm like, I know he took that Star Wars figure. You might do things to hide that information. Like, I didn't steal it, but it matters because it's still dictating our behavior to some extent. For and against, I would say. But does it matter in a permanent sense? I guess probably not, because power is always going to play a role there.
Well, guys, I really love talking about this with you guys. I have to go, but
okay, you're headed over to your channel. Are you streaming on your channel?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was just so much fun, and I hope we get to talk about the show in really great detail once it's all done in 2 more episodes.
That would be awesome. It'd be so fun to break this down.
Is this gargoyles you're talking about?
Oh yeah, I'll be talking about gargoyles tonight. We're close to the end of the whole thing, so
here it is.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
this has been an ongoing project with Retro.
Oh yeah, really, really long. Oh, and I do have a full house. Okay, I do have to head out, but guys, enjoy the rest of your talk.
Put the link down there. Go join Retro. Go join Retro.
Oh, thank you. All right, bye guys.
Retro, great seeing you.
Great to see you as well. You see.
Thank you. Thank you, Retro.
Well, that was awesome that she was able to.
I'm very glad she was able to come on.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. I think this has been an incredible discussion.
I think it has been. I think it has been.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. I guess my final thought is there are themes, and I think the themes are different from the themes in episode 1. Whether or not those original themes come back, probably, but that there is also a difference between a premise and a theme. And defining conflict is also a little different as well.
So we're going to talk about next Tuesday. We're going to be. I don't have the book sitting next to me. I guess I said it someplace else. But Brianna's book, City of Reckoning. So we'll be talking about City of Reckoning after that. I think that Tuesday after that would mean that House of the Dragon has concluded. So we might. We do need to talk about this again.
Yeah,
we might want to talk about it, because then I was thinking after that it was probably time for us to start talking about the cultists, and we could do that. Or if we're not ready for that, then in 2 weeks, then we would be able to conclude the show and we could return to the House of the Dragon after that. Then much later, I mean, several weeks later, it would take me to get through this entire book and then rewatch the entire show and then come back to it. So check from? I don't know what that is.
Is that a show?
Is that a show? I don't know. I saw that come up. I don't know what that is.
Check from, please. And Fletcher, by the way, very lively in the chat with a lot of very good points. So I thought Fletcher was just as much a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is a show. The From is a show.
Oh, it is?
TV series 2022.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, from Amazon.
What's the premise?
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of that. Okay, so we'll look into it.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out. Another show that I just started was We About to Die. Am I saying that right?
Oh, the
Yeah,
Rome one? Oh, you've been watching that?
Yes.
I have seen advertisements on Reddit. It seems like this is how Rome really was. So you've been watching that?
I watched the first episode like last night, and
Okay.
it's a setup episode. It's a pilot. So, I usually give a show about 3 episodes before I'm like, I'm in or I'm out. So I've only watched 1 episode. I liked it a lot. There were certain things about my book and the Byzantine Empire that I thought that are relatively unique, like the blue faction and the green faction. Well, they're mentioned in this show. So I enjoyed it. I am very excited about this show, and I'll probably watch the whole darn thing. I was also told I need to watch Spartacus, which is an older show. I heard it's masterfully written, so I'm going to watch that as well. So I've got my work cut out for me, and I still have to finish Brianna's book.
Yeah. Okay. So you got to finish Brianna's book. There's so much going on there. Yeah. There's so much to read and stuff like that. I would be interested to know, like, you probably watch or something like that when you watch Dominion, this or the interview. Maybe the author will come on. So yes, there's a lot going on.
Awesome.
I feel like I've been out of it. I'm trying to get the Cultist RPG up and running, and I put out. I decided to actually do a little bit more than I was going to, and I put out a request for quotes to create miniatures from a manufacturer overseas and things like that.
Oh wow!
And so I was like, all right, if we're gonna do this, we might as well do it right. And so it's taking me a little bit longer because I commissioned art. I commissioned 9 pieces of art. And those are coming in, and then I've also got to. So I've been doing a little bit more than I thought I was going to do.
Yeah, well, that happens, mission
that happens. But I'm like, all right, let's do it right. Let's do it right. So anyway, I'll be in touch with everybody there. Hey, if you're here and you're not part of the Raven Keep Discord server, let me go ahead and put the Raven Keep Discord server link into the chat. Sometimes I forget to do that. Invite people. Hey, Raven Keep Discord. If you are here, Raven Keep Discord. That's where we hang out. All right.
That's awesome.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. It was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being part of this in the live stream and in the chat. Thank you to everybody who's going to be watching on replay. Put your comments in the comments. Put your comments in the comments. Please do write comments.
Leave a comment.
I read those and then I reply and things like that. So if we've missed things, please do put it in the comments. That'd be great.
Yeah. In fact,
all right.
If you have ideas on what the themes of the show are in general or in just season 2, leave them in the comments because we'll read them and it'll give us something else to think about for the next conversation. So don't hesitate. In fact, I encourage everyone to leave some comments about what you think the themes of House of the Dragon are.
Yeah, that would be fantastic because we should return to that conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, we will. I don't think we couldn't, Heath.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Later.
Good night, everybody.